Thanks very much for joining me for another edition of 15 Minutes with Father Greg. There's been something I've wanted to talk about for the past couple of weeks, but I'm just getting around to now, and that is the cause for great joy and celebration for our church here in America. But first, let me just tell you where I am in case you're not familiar with this space. I'm on the second floor of our parish center in what's called the Magella Room, one of our meeting rooms upstairs. And as you can likely tell by what's behind me here on the wall, this is the room where very often our parish's Knights of Columbus Council has its meetings, a few times a month in fact. And the reason why I wanted to share this spot with you is because of the message I want to share with you. Some of you know about it already, and that was that on October 31st, Halloween, there was a great celebration of a Mass of Beatification of Father Michael J. McGivney. Now that name may not be familiar to you, but it is to a lot of households, especially if their dads and brothers belong to the Knights of Columbus. Father McGivney lived in the 19th century. He lived from 1852 to 1890. He was the son of Irish immigrants. He was the oldest of 13 children, but many of them died either at childbirth or during childhood. At age 13, Father McGivney left school and started to work, actually making spoons of all things. By the time he was a late teen, he discerned the vocation to the priesthood, and then he entered seminary. He studied for a few years in Quebec, as well as in Niagara Falls area at a seminary there. But then he had to return home to take care of his younger siblings when his father died prematurely. This would leave a lasting impression upon Father McGivney. After his family was a little bit more stabilized, he was able to return to his seminary studies and went down to Baltimore and was eventually ordained in 1887. Shortly after ordination, he was assigned to parishes back up in the Connecticut area. Now, the context in which he lived is really important because it would have a lasting impact not only on the life of Father McGivney, but on his legacy and why we know him today. Remember, I said that he grew up in a large family that was very poor. His parents were immigrants. They were new to the country, and though they spoke the language, they were not welcomed. This was the time of the Know-Nothing Party. Some of you might recall from history class this era in American history. The Know-Nothing Party was an extremely xenophobic group that did not want outsiders, non-Native Americans. And by that, they did not mean what we think of today as Native Americans, but those who were not here from the colonial times, those who did not come from Protestant families. They did not want outsiders invading, as they perceived it, the American shores. They were strongly racist, and they were also strongly anti-Catholic. In fact, Father McGivney saw firsthand, and some of you may even know this from your own experience, from your grandparents or great-grandparents, very often in advertisements for jobs, there would be a line, "Irish need not apply." They were not welcomed to even apply for certain jobs, and it was because of Ireland's strong ties to the Catholic Church. And it wasn't only the Irish who were discriminated against, but really anyone who came from a predominantly Catholic country. There was this fear, which might seem irrational to us today, that if more Catholics came to America and started to go up the ladder of American society, especially in politics, that it would be the Vatican, the Pope, and the bishops guiding the affairs of American society and not the people. To us today, that might seem kind of crazy and irrational, but again, that was the context in which Father McGivney was serving as a priest. Especially here in the northern part of America, this strong anti-Catholic sentiment was rampant. So, after some time, Father McGivney founded what would become his lasting legacy, the Knights of Columbus. It all started with a simple meeting of a couple dozen of his parishioners on March 29th, 1882 at St. Mary's Parish in New Haven, Connecticut. Father McGivney founds this community, this fraternity, that he wanted grounded in charity and in unity. He founded this group that these men would be able to be together, stand together, united in faith and united in charity. It also had a very real objective of helping families who were in need. Father McGivney experienced that tragedy of losing his father, the breadwinner, at a very young age, such that he had to leave seminary and actually go home to work to support his family. He didn't want any family to have to do that, to fall into despair, perhaps even bankruptcy, to become poor. And so he wanted people to work together. And so part of the founding of this community was financial assistance to widows and orphans, to the bereft, to the homeless, to those who had no other means of helping themselves. Father McGivney and his early band of guys together in this new fraternity set out to help alleviate suffering wherever they found it. Before his 40th birthday, Father McGivney contracted a virus during a pandemic of his own time that was like a very severe flu, and eventually succumbed to that and died rather young. And yet in his short life and even shorter priesthood, he has left a lasting impression upon not only the church here in America, but throughout the world. They chose this name, the Knights of Columbus, because at this point, Christopher Columbus was perhaps the most revered Catholic in American society. After all, he was of Italian descent himself and founded this nation and started the great expansion of Europe over into North America. And so because of that, they chose Columbus as sort of a patron. There are over 2 million members as of this year in the Knights of Columbus, this fraternity for Catholic men over the age of 18. Since then, there also have developed the Squires, which is kind of a junior Knights of Columbus, as well as Columbiettes, a female organization that also is inspired by the legacy of Father McGivney. There are over 15,000 councils worldwide, and we're blessed to have one here at St. Gerard's. I have a great personal affection for the Knights of Columbus. In my home parish, when I was a teenager, they decided that there was enough members, enough men who were interested in starting our own council, that we chartered a new council. And my dad and I were charter members of that council in my home parish. Since then, I've become a 4th degree knight in this great fraternity. There are 4 principles that ground this organization: charity, unity, fraternity, and patriotism. All of which converge on 2 points: that it is possible to be a good Catholic, to live in charity and fraternity with others, and at the same time to contribute to society, to contribute to American society. And in fact, in being a good citizen, you are fulfilling your discipleship. And part of being a good disciple of Christ is also serving your nation boldly, and especially in times of need. So the legacy of Father McGivney is enduring. And it's no wonder that a cause for his canonization was opened by the Archdiocese of Hartford in 1992. In 2008, Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI declared him venerable. That is the first step towards canonization. And earlier this year, our Holy Father Pope Francis verified that a miracle had been attributed to the intercession of Father McGivney, and thus paved the way for him to be beatified, declared a blessed. And so now, the only thing that stands between Father McGivney and canonization, becoming a declared saint of the Church, is the investigation and declaration of a second miracle attributed to his intercession. It's important for us as Catholics to revere the holy men and women who have gone before us. During this month of November, we recall in a particular way the communion of saints. And as we know, we started this month with the celebration of All Saints' Day. We recognize those who have lived heroic virtue in their own time, often in great adversity, and who have been shining examples in word and in deed to the gospel values of Jesus Christ. So it's important for us, especially as Americans, to realize our own contribution to the Catholic tradition. Even though we are a relatively young nation, there are already about 15 American saints and those who have been beatified. And there are dozens of other causes of canonization that have been opened. It's good for us to get to know their stories, like Mother Seton and Mother Cabrini, and yes, Father McGivney. We all have a role to play in our church and in our nation. So maybe you or your father or brother or son is a Knight of Columbus. If not, perhaps you would encourage them. And gentlemen, you need to consider it yourself, being part of this organization that is dedicated to charity and unity, that is dedicated to the vision of Father McGivney, of leaving no one behind, of serving God by serving each other. Please check out kofc.org for more information about this amazing organization. I personally want to thank the Knights of Columbus here at St. Gerard's and the many councils in all the parishes I've been at that have worked tirelessly, giving not only hundreds of millions of dollars in charitable donations every year worldwide, but also giving many millions of hours of service. Blood, sweat, and tears, yes, poured into parishes and dioceses throughout the world. Some have called the Knights of Columbus the right arm of the church. That's because this organization is always there at the call of our Holy Father, the Pope, of bishops, and yes, of us pastors as well. When we're in need of assistance, we know to whom we can turn, the Knights of Columbus. So I'm grateful to all the Knights out there, to my brothers. Thank you for your service and your dedication. And we entrust ourselves to the intercession of Blessed Michael McGivney. And we ask God to raise up more men and women of service after his example. As always, thanks so much for joining me for this brief time. Please feel free to submit your questions about our Catholic faith by following the Google link below. Until we see you in church, God bless you and your family.